There are things that cannot be told, not because they are forbidden in some human sense, or because I would withhold them to preserve a mystery, but because they cannot be heard until a certain capacity in you awakens. And unless that inner capacity is present, the words remain only words, and worse than that, they become dangerous to you. So I speak now to the few who can listen with the inner ear, and I say to the rest, not as punishment, but as mercy, wait until your listening becomes still enough to hear. Do you see that? Do you follow that? The inner teaching is here. It has always been here. And whatever I have discovered in my practice through much more than 20 years is available. But not as information to be filed under your cleverness, not as argument to win a debate, not as a new toy for the intellect or a new color for the emotions. It is a door. It is a door within you. And until that door opens, you will hear syllables and miss the silence in which the truth is received. The inner ear is not imagination, not fantasy, not daydreaming about holy things. It is not emotional sensitivity that weeps at hymns and then hurries back to judge after the service. It is not the brilliance of the mind that can outline, diagram, and quote the letter. The inner ear is spiritual discernment itself, a faculty of your own soul that hears the word when the five senses are quiet, that sees what is not visible, that knows without the noises of thought. As long as you listen with the ear of flesh, you will take the letter and you will try to make it work, and it will not work. And then two more problems will rise where one was before, because the mind has weaponized the message and turned it into a method of self-will. Do you understand that? So I tell you plainly and gently, there is nothing hidden from you. The hiding has been for you. A soft veil, until you could bear to hear without clutching, until you could receive without grasping. If I were to pour into the unready ear, you would hurry out to correct persons and conditions. You would use holy phrases to condemn and to coerce. You would turn truth into material meta, and all the while miss the presence that needs no defense. Therefore we wait. We listen. We grow quiet. You are not passed by. You are being protected from mistaking spiritual bread for stones of logic. Only a few want this, and of those few, only fewer can live it. Because the proof of readiness is not in how many pages you underline, nor in how beautifully you can repeat my phrases. The proof is in what you stop reacting to. When praise comes and blame comes, and the body whispers a story, and the newspaper shouts its headlines, and the neighbor's tongue tells you who is wicked and who is righteous, the inner ear hears another report and remains poised. Do you see that? The inner ear does not argue. It does not reach for mental force. It does not try to make God happen. It abides until the word announces itself within, and then you know, and you need no persuading. So we begin at the threshold. Not a talent to polish, not a personality to perfect, not a sensitivity to parade. A door, and the hand that opens it is your own stillness. Be still and listen, not harder, but deeper, and you will discover that what seemed hidden was waiting for you, just beyond the noise of your hearing. Now, as we stand at this door, I must give you one word without which nothing in this message will function for you. And if you will listen with the inner ear and not with the argument of the mind, this one word will save you years of trying to fix pictures and calling it spiritual work. And the word is hypnotism. There is only one error, and it is hypnotism. And hypnotism appears as 1,000 different pictures and stories and headlines and symptoms, and even as virtues and successes and beautiful improvements. But the nature of it is one and the same. acceptance of sense testimony as reality. Do you see that? Hypnotism is not a stage trick with a man on a platform and a watch swinging. Hypnotism is the moment you let what eye sees and ear hears and nerves report be law to you. Whether that report seems to be good humanhood or bad humanhood. For both are the same mesmeric picture, as long as they claim presence and power apart from God. Now make the pivot with me, and do not let it slip, because this is the rock. If God is infinite, if God is the only presence, and the only power, and the only life, and the only mind, and the only soul, and the only spirit, and the only law, then whatever appears unlike God cannot be a creation and cannot be a law. It can only be a suggestion. Do you follow that? You cannot have God and something else too. No. There is not God and a disease, not God and a lack, not God and a sin, not God and a problem. There is only God. And when the senses present a picture unlike God, you are face to face with hypnotism, not with a second power. The moment you admit a second power, even to fight it, you are under the spell. This is why students fail and grow weary and make a career of chasing shadows. They set out to fix the picture, to improve the appearance, to treat the effect. And by that very act, they confirm that the picture has presence and law. And when they seem to fix it, two more take its place. And they say, "Why is practice so hard?" And I tell you, it is hard only because you are engaged in material meta and not spiritual work. As long as you fight disease, you install disease as your opponent. As long as you fight lack, you enthrone lack with a crown and a scepter. As long as you fight sin, you make sin a power you must wrestle. And now the battle is endless, because you have given the picture a law it never possessed. Do you see that? The battle is never with disease, never with sin, never with lack. The only battle, and even that is a misnomer, is with the belief that these have law, that these can act, that these can operate apart from the one. And how do you meet a belief? Not by struggling with it, not by pushing the waves of the mirage, not by manipulating effects. You meet it by refusing it as law and resting in the presence that is law unto itself. One life, one mind, one soul, one spirit, one law. And therefore no other mind to suggest, no other law to enforce, no other life to wither, no other power to fear. When this is clear to you, not as a recited creed but as a recognition dawning in stillness, you will not spend your days knocking down cardboard figures. You will stop treating effects, and you will begin to witness dehypnotization, which is the only healing there is. Do you understand that? Now you will see why. Though you have heard these words before, and though you can repeat them flawlessly, the spell has not yet broken in some areas of your life. And I must say this to you without softening it. As long as you are judging by appearances, you cannot be dehypnotized. For the five senses are the very channel of the suggestion, the pipe that carries the mirage into your belief. And so, to keep consulting the senses for verification is to keep asking the hypnotist if the snakes are still there. And he nods, and you nod, and the fear mounts. Do you see that? Hearing words is not hearing truth. And the failure of many sincere students is to imagine that by taking in more words through the ear of flesh, they will sooner or later produce spirit. And it never happens, because spirit is not the product of syllables. Spirit is the presence that announces itself when the senses are quiet. And until that moment, the lecture is only pleasant music or irritating noise depending on your temperament, but nothing in your inner life has shifted. Do you follow that? Two men sit in the room. One goes away with a notebook full of lines. The other goes away empty-handed, and yet his fear is gone. his need dissolves. He cannot tell you what sentence did it, because no sentence did it. The word spoke itself within. The inner ear awakened, and from then on he is not the same man. Think of a symphony, and do not miss the principle. Two people sit under the same conductor, hear the same instruments. One says it is too long, and all the fiddles sound alike. The other is lifted into a world where time is not. The difference is not the volume of sound, but the capacity that hears. Consciousness is the difference. Do you see that? Or stand before a canvas, and one says it is only paint, and the other beholds light and space and meaning. The eyes in both heads worked, but in one the aesthetic sense had been awakened, a faculty invisible to the camera. And this is what I mean when I say, I see that which is not visible. I hear that which is not audible. Because a faculty beyond the five has opened, not imagination, not fantasy, but spiritual sense. Now take this home where it hurts and heals. You can say God is all 1,000 times, and fear the report when it comes in the morning mail. And the proof of your fear is the proof that your statement was only words in the ear, and not the word in consciousness. Again, not to condemn you, but to save you a lifetime of recitation without realization. Do you understand that? If the body whispers a symptom, and you rush to consult the whisper as law, you are back at the altar of hypnotism. If the newspaper shouts calamity, and you give it authority by your heartbeat, you are bowing to the image. If a friend speaks ill, and you accept the picture as person, you are in the dream again. So the preparation is not study alone. Not more and better words, there you will read and you will listen. But you will do it differently. You will do it in stillness, in receptivity, in non-reaction. You will let the senses grow quiet so the inner ear can function. And you will practice not answering the appearance, not arguing with it, not pushing it away and not pulling it close. You will be still inside of you until the word utters itself. And then the scene before you has no power to move you, because you are not judging it. This is the threshold. This is the way the spell breaks, not by listening harder with the ear, but by hearing without the senses. And then healing and harmony are included, because only God is present, and only God is power. Do you follow that? Picture the hot road across the desert. And you know this because every one of you has driven it. The horizon shimmers. The road ahead looks like a lake. And if you are new to the country, you slow down, and you say there is water across the road. And if you are old to the country, you smile, and you keep driving, because you know there isn't any. And notice this, you do not get out with pails and mops to dry up the highway. You do not rebuke the sun. You do not argue with the air. You do nothing to the picture, because there is no picture to correct. There is no water to remove. There is only a false seeing to outgrow. Do you see that? The only change that occurs is in you, not in the road. The only act is recognition. And the instant recognition dawns, the problem ends without an act upon the appearance. And you will please not miss the law in this, because here is the whole of spiritual healing in a child's example. Carry it over now, and you will not be confused again. You do not cure disease. There isn't any. You do not fix lack. There isn't any. You do not mend broken hearts or bad tempers or dangerous climates. There aren't any. What there is hypnotism appearing as these pictures. One error in 1,000 costumes. And the one remedy is the ending of the spell. Dehypnotization. Spiritual seeing. Do you follow that? As long as you take pails and mops to the mirage, you are a very busy person. As long as you treat effects, two more will rise where one was. And you will call that practice, and you will grow tired and old in it. But it is not practice. It is material meta under a religious name. Now I tell you why this could not be given to you on the first day. Because until the inner ear begins to open, the human mind takes this and turns it into denial. And denial is still worshiping the picture. Denial is still standing at the edge of the road, saying, "There is no water, there is no water," while your hands keep trying to steer around it. Do you understand that? Positive thinking is polishing the mirage. Spiritual seeing is discovering there was never water, never a second power, never a law apart from God, and therefore nothing to resist, nothing to fix, nothing to fear. In other words, the aim here is not a stronger statement, not a louder proclamation, but a quieter consciousness, a capacity that refuses to take suggestion as law. So you are preparing for the hidden instruction that is not really hidden at all, only guarded until you can bear it. And it is this: the practitioner's work is not mental effort, not the projecting of thought, not the forcing of truth upon appearances. The practitioner's work is to be so still inwardly that the word announces itself as one presence and one power, one life, one mind, one soul, one spirit, one law. And in that recognition, the picture dissolves, because there never was anything there to support it. Healing is not changing the picture. Healing is seeing that there never was water on the road, never a disease in God, never a power apart from the infinite. And when you see that, not say it, but see it, the road is dry and always was, and you walk on. Do you see that? Do you follow that? Do you understand that? Let me give you the picture that has trained more practitioners than all the books on your shelves. And if you will listen with the inner ear, you will never forget it. A man sits in his living room, and someone whispers, "Do you know there are snakes in that tall plant over there?" And he turns, and he sees only a plant. But the suggestion has been offered, and while the mind is weighing it, the body is already answering. Breath shortens, stomach tightens, hands grow wet. The eyes begin to look again and again until the leaves look like coiled shapes, and now the fear rises like a tide. Do you see that? In that instant, the man is not dealing with a plant. He is dealing with a law he has accepted. A law that says snakes have power to harm, and I must protect myself. And the next step follows of the same piece. The body reacts. The adrenaline flows. The heart hammers. The legs move. The hand reaches for a stick. The act of violence becomes reasonable, necessary, justified. And in 2 minutes, the pot is smashed, and the room is torn. And the man stands panting in triumph over a picture that never was. Do you follow that? Now the shame and the laughter and the cleanup all come later. When a friend says there weren't any snakes, it is a rubber plant. And the man can agree and be ashamed, or he can defend his fear. Anyone would have done the same. And this is where your practice is decided, because fear is not your enemy. Fear is your evidence that you accepted the suggestion as law. Fear is the dashboard light that says you bowed before a second power. And if you will read it that way, you will wake. If you will defend it, you will sleep again. Do you understand that? The fear did not come from snakes. There were none. The fear came from hypnotism accepted. And as long as the spell lasts, your body will perform its ritual, and your mind will call it necessity. And 2 more snakes will appear where one was before. Because suggestion breeds suggestion. Carry this over into the room where you live. The moment you hear a name on a medical report and a cold current runs through you. The moment you see a number on a bank paper and your throat tightens. The moment you read a headline and you feel small. That very instant is your proof you did not merely hear a word. You accepted a law other than God. You said yes to a second presence. And that is what we name sin, not as moral accusation, but as definition. Sin is returning to the belief in a material universe with power and law apart from God. Sin is not what the body did or did not. Sin is bowing to the image and then calling your reaction natural. Neither do I condemn you. We all begin hypnotized. Thank heavens we need not remain there. But do not remain by defending your reaction. Do not say anybody would be afraid, for then you enshrine the snakes, and you will live by sticks and smashed pots. Do you see that? So the question is not, how shall I kill the snakes? There are none. The question is, where in me did I agree to the suggestion? Where did I let the five senses legislate law for me? And here we stand at the threshold of the hidden teaching that really was only guarded until now. The exact inner stance that breaks the spell. It is not a doing, and it is not a force, and it is not an argument. It is a still consent to truth, a refusal to react, a quiet beholding of one presence and one power, one life, one mind, one soul, one spirit, one law. And in that poise the fear has no root, because the suggestion finds no believer. As long as you are a believer, you will be a striker and a fixer and a defender. The minute belief dissolves in silence, you will be a beholder, and the picture will dissolve, because there isn't any. Do you follow that? We move now from the proof to the practice, from the story to the stance. And when you are ready to stop trying to make truth happen, truth will reveal that there were never snakes in the plant, never a second power, and you will rest. So now we touch the guarded instruction, and I phrase it as plainly as I know how. I cannot tell you what to do until you stop trying to do it. Because the moment you set out to do something to truth, you have made a power of the picture, and you are back in material meta. Do you see that? Every technique, every mental push, every carefully constructed affirmation that tries to make the scene improve is still treating an effect. It is still saying there is God and a condition too, and I must bring God to bear upon it. And there you have two powers again, and the spell is unbroken. Do you follow that? This is why this was hidden for you and not from you. Because if I had said this to the unready, they would have run home and made a new method out of non-method. They would have scheduled 15 minutes twice a day of not doing. They would have timed their stillness and graded it and compared notes. And all the while their eye would have been on a result, which is to say, on the mirage. The human mind must always convert revelation into routine, and then it begins to practice a routine instead of abiding in God. And that is the difference between repeating words and hearing the word. So I waited for the inner ear to begin to live in you. And now, listen. Readiness is not measured by brilliance or zeal. It is measured by what you can let alone. When the report arrives, you can let it lie on the table, and you do not run to outshout it with holy sentences. When the senses shout, you do not answer them. When the body whispers, you do not hurry to stroke it with comforting phrases. You sit. You are still. You let the five senses grow quiet, and you refuse to build a case either for or against the picture. Do you see that? It is not indifference, and it is not denial. It is the recognition that there is only one presence and one power. and therefore nothing present to oppose and nothing to support. In that non-reaction, a strange and wonderful thing occurs without your management. Spiritual consciousness rises of itself as naturally as light replaces darkness. Not because you pushed a switch, but because light is the fact and darkness never was. Do you follow that? You are ready when you can bear to let truth be truth without your help. When you can sit in the middle of noise and not answer it. When you can hear the first crash of suggestion and not run to pick up the pieces. When you can let appearances float past like clouds and not climb into them. When you can behold without choosing sides. Then, and only then, can I tell you the instruction, because now it will not become a weapon. It will not become a technique. It will remain an attitude of being. Be still. Shut the door of the senses. Do not try to make God appear. Let God reveal. In other words, stop trying to make truth happen, and you will discover truth has always been happening, and you were too busy pushing to notice. Do not mistake this for passivity. No, this is dominion. As long as you fight, you are confessing an equal. As long as you argue, you are acknowledging a law outside of God. But when you rest in non-dual recognition, you are the place where the spell breaks. You are the point of light before which the mirage cannot stand, and healing happens in proportion to your stillness, because there is not a second presence to do anything to. Do you see that? Do you understand that? This is the threshold, and when you cross it, practice begins to practice you. You will find yourself lived by the presence instead of living to improve appearances, and then the hidden instruction is no longer a secret. It is your nature. Now let me give you the practitioner's secret. And it is not a secret as in hidden knowledge, but as in a key that only turns when the hand is quiet. Healing takes place in proportion to your reaction to the appearance. The less you react, the more healing. The more you react, the less healing. And do not argue with me on this, because it is the operational law of spiritual practice. And you can test it today. Do you see that? As long as you flinch before the report, as long as you hurry to take sides with or against a picture, the spell is in you, and you will treat effects. The instant you become still and refuse to grant the picture presence, power, law, or cause, the spell loosens, and you are witnessing rather than wrestling. Do you follow that? Non-reaction is not indifference. Never. It is not the cold eye that passes by suffering. It is the refusal to baptize suffering with identity. It is the love that will wipe a brow and drive a friend to the appointment, and cook a meal, if that is the form of the day, while inwardly granting no reality, no cause, no law to the appearance. And in that poise you are not ignoring, you are beholding. Do you see that? Indifference says, I do not care. Non-reaction says, I care so much I will not give you over to a lie. I will not add my fear to your fear. I will not make a second power of your picture. So how do you practice in the very moment? Because this must be moment by moment, or it is nothing but talk. The phone rings and the voice says, here is the news. Before thought begins to treat, close the inner door and say within yourself, Father, I know there is only God, one presence, one power, one life, one mind, one soul, one spirit, one law. And then be still, not repeating by force but consenting to silence. Do you follow that? When the body whispers, when the headline shouts, when the banknote arrives, do not analyze, do not calculate, do not consult the calendar for how long this may last. Turn inward and return to the one before a single syllable of fear fastens. And if you have already reacted, do not scold yourself. Simply stop. Withdraw attention. Rest in the recognition. there is only God. In other words, you reset to reality before you begin to meddle in effects. Beware here of what I call material meta wearing a spiritual head. The mind that says, let me list the symptoms, let me trace the roots, let me evaluate personalities and timelines and probable outcomes. Because all of that is still an argument with the mirage. And every argument feeds the picture. Do you see that? The question, how long will it last, what caused it, who is to blame, is the language of hypnosis. The language of spirit is silence that knows. I and the Father are one, and beside this oneness there is no other. Your power is not in mental force. Your power is in spiritual poise. And healing happens to the degree you do not let the suggestion pull you out of that poise. As long as you are steady, the hypnotism has no entrance. The minute you lunge, the snakes are back in the plant. Do you see that? And now you can understand the next step that must be taken, or you will fall again into treating effects. You cannot treat a person at all. The person is part of the picture. The beholding is of what God is revealing as identity, and to that we turn. Do you follow that? Now let me say it without a veil and without diplomacy, because this is where many of you keep one foot in the dream. You cannot treat a person. You cannot treat a condition. You cannot treat a family, a history, a medical file. You cannot even treat a symptom that has stolen a name. There is only hypnotism claiming there are persons and conditions needing treatment. Do you see that? The very instant you accept a someone in need, you have accepted the picture as identity, and you are trying to pour truth into a container that does not exist. And then you will work hard, and then you will ask why it is slow, and I will answer it is slow because you are working on that which is not there. Do you follow that? Identity must be settled before any prayer can be prayer. There are not sick humans and well humans. There are not guilty humans and innocent humans. There is only God expressing itself as being. One life being all life. One mind knowing all knowing. One soul fulfilling all inspiration. One spirit animating all activity. One law maintaining all order. And therefore, no second self apart from that to fix, and no second law to fight. Do you see that? The moment you consent to this, not poetically, but factually, you stop looking out at a personality with a problem, and you begin to behold presence, being itself, where the senses had painted a mask. Judgment is the glue of hypnosis. The label patient is not compassion, it is agreement with the picture. It is a quiet baptism that says, you are your condition, and I will help you improve it. Improvement of a lie is still a lie. Beholding of truth dissolves the label because there is nothing to hold it. Do you understand that? When you say, this is a hard case, you have woven cords around your own eyes. When you say, this is a dear soul but weak, you have signed a pact with suggestion. Drop it. Be still inside until no label can find a hook in you. So the instruction to the practitioner is not, go there and fix him. It is, get inside of yourself and behold the Christ identity present where the senses see a problem. And remain until that beholding outshines the picture. Do you see that? You close the inner door, and you do not take the client in there. You do not carry a face or a symptom or a story. You enter alone, and you abide in the fact. I and the Father are one, and beside this one, there is no other. Then you wait without effort, without sending thought, without pushing light, until the word announces itself as one presence and one power and one life and one mind and one soul, and one spirit, and one law. And in that announcement, there is no person to repair, and no condition to alter. If someone says, "My child has fever," you do not treat a child, and you do not treat a fever. You behold life, infinite and indivisible, and incapable of fluctuation. You behold mind, universal, and incapable of confusion. You behold law, perfect, and incapable of lapse. And you refuse to come down from that mount to argue with the thermometer. Do you follow that? If your own senses chatter, you do not scold them, and you do not obey them. You go deeper until silence swallows both chatter and scolding, and there you stay. You are not fixing them. You are witnessing God. And the picture yields because it never had law or identity. Do you see that? Do you understand that? Now we come to the capstone, without which the rest collapses back into method and effort. And it is not mine. It is the principle given long before any of us were born. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. And if you will listen with the inner ear, you will hear that this sentence cancels a lifetime of form chasing. Do you see that? There is only one demonstration, and that is God realized. There is no demonstration of health. There is no demonstration of supply. There is no demonstration of companionship. There is no demonstration of safety or opportunity. There is only the realization of God as the one presence and the one power. And then the forms that human sense was pleading for appear as the natural expression of that realization, and not as the achievement of your mind. Do you follow that? As long as you seek forms as ends, you are back at the edge of the road, with your pails and your mops. You are trying to dry a mirage, and two more forms will elude you for every one you grasp. And then you will say, "Prayer did not work. Practice is slow." And I will say, "No, you were polishing the picture. You were treating effects. You were requesting a second presence to come bless a second power." Do you see that? When you turn about and you seek first the kingdom, which is to say you consent to the fact of God as all, you have touched substance. And form will take care of itself, because form is only the showing forth of substance. It has no life of its own. Do you follow that? Think in pictures you can carry. You cannot demonstrate a mahogany chair. You can only demonstrate mahogany. And out of mahogany chairs and tables and chests are included. You cannot demonstrate sunbeams by will. You can only have the sun, and the beams are the included radiance. You cannot demonstrate music by tugging at the air. You can only have music in consciousness, and the room fills. In other words, when God is realized as the one life and the one mind and the one soul and the one spirit and the one law, health and supply and harmony are included, and your hands are out of it. Your pride is out of it. Your fear is out of it, because there is no second cause to support or oppose. Do you understand that? Now the senses will demand a guarantee. The senses will say, "Show me the form, and then I will believe." And there you are, back in hypnosis. Because belief in form as cause is the spell. But the inner ear can rest without visible proof. The inner ear can be still in the presence, and let the forms come as they must, or not come as they must. And neither way does it move you, because you are living at the level of substance. Do you see that? This is why we have spent our time dehypnotizing your attention, because only spiritual hearing can accept God as substance. The ear of flesh will always ask for evidence, and thereby create another loop of delay. So the practice now is very simple and very searching. Do not ask for a thing. Do not set a form as a goal. Do not attempt to bend truth toward a condition. Turn within and seek the kingdom, which is the realized presence. And remain until you know without words that I and the Father are one, and beside this oneness there is no other. And then step into your day without bargaining for results. Live in the atmosphere where words become realization, where be still is not a phrase but a climate. And you will find, without watching the clock and without testing the picture, that all these things are added, because they never were absent from the substance, only from the senses. Do you see that? Do you follow that? Do you understand that? Your assignment now is very simple and very exacting. And if you will listen with the inner ear, you will understand why it has been guarded by a single phrase. Shut the door on sense testimony, and let the thunder of silence speak. Set apart in your day 2 or 3 periods, not long if you are faithful, 5 minutes if you can be honest, 15 if grace sustains you. And in those periods, shut the eyes and the ears to the traffic of the world and the tongue to phrases. And do not enter for relaxation. Do not enter for escape. Enter for dehypnotization. Do you see that? You are not trying to feel better. You are letting the 5 senses grow quiet so that the spell of appearances breaks. And you are consenting to be lived by the presence rather than impressed by the picture. Here is the inner sequence, and you can practice it a dozen times in a day without anyone knowing. Notice the report the very instant it presents itself. A word, a symptom, a headline, a figure. And before a single syllable of fear can fasten, refuse it as law. Not stubbornly, quietly. Father, I do not accept a second presence. I do not admit a second power. Then turn within and shut the inner door, and rest in God is. Not as a sentence repeated against the mind, but as a soft consent that does not argue. And remain until the compulsion to think fades. Do you follow that? When the urge to fix, to plan, to rehearse, to defend slackens like a rope that has lost its pull, then you will know the thunder of silence is speaking, not in words, but in assurance. One presence, one power, one life, one mind, one soul, one spirit, one law, and you will let it be. Guard this practice from staleness, as you would guard your own breath. The moment God is becomes a phrase on your tongue. It dies on your tongue. Drop it and return to silence. Do you see that? Let every period be fresh, as if you had never heard the words. Let the stillness come first, and the words, if any, be born out of the stillness. Never the other way around. Because routine is the hypnotism of religion, and we are breaking spells, not weaving them. Do not count minutes. Do not measure results. Do not test the picture after rising. Rise and walk on, and let the mirage care for itself. If you have heard even a little with the inner ear, you will not be the same. You will find yourself pausing before reaction, and in that pause, the spell loses power. And if you have not heard yet, do not struggle. Do not practice harder. Practice quieter. Sit and be still, and let the 5 senses cool. For the inner ear opens when the outer closes. Do you follow that? Readiness is not force. Readiness is willingness to let appearances pass without enlistment, and that willingness grows with every small consent you give to silence. And now the benediction is not a wish. It is a fact. You are not trying to become spiritual. You are consenting to what already is. You are not making God appear. You are letting God be all. And beside this oneness, there is no other. Rest in that. Walk in that. Let the day come and go in that. And where the senses used to shout, you will hear a deep quiet that says, I am here. And that is enough. Blessings and aloha.